Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be talking about what weights and biases are, and activation keys to what they are, what they do. So last video we discussed about this formula right here. So basically it's the weight times input plus the bias. So these lines, as you guys can see, have a certain weight, and they're multiplied by the input, and after that they are added to the bias. What does this actually mean? So if we were to actually calculate this formula, you will get something like weight 1 plus and times the input, I'll say that's x1, and this is added to w2 and x2, and then it just goes on. After it goes on, it gets also added to the bias. So this would look something if this, okay, so let me just clear up some space. So weight times the inputs plus the bias. So if you were to do it, it'll look something like this. Weight 1 and input 1, that's added to weight 2 times the input 2, and then it just goes on, and then it just gets added to the bias. So so we know what weights and inputs are. What are the bias? So the bias are basically like they help with variation kinds of issues. So let's get into this diagram that I'll be showing you. So this is like the diagram that I was talking about. So so as you guys can see in the input layer, there are two neurons. These neurons are connected with these lines, and these lines have these weights. So these weights, guys, as you guys can see, are basically all neural networks are initialized with these weights. These weights are like then optimized during the training period, and you need these weights to like actually help train your neural network. Basically, they're needed. All neural networks have them. So in the hidden layer, we see 3 neurons, and all of these neurons are connected to the next hidden layer, and then they're just connected to the output layer. And the output layer has 2 neurons, and then the output layer just gives an output. So that was like the diagram that I wanted to show you guys. So now let's get in. Let's get back. So I'm back to my Paint 3D. So what are activation functions? So as you guys can see, this formula that I showed you, you can just have like an output like directly. It needs to be fed into an activation function which can deliver an output. You need an activation function to give you an output. Without no activation function, you won't get the outputs. So basically, if we were to apply that into this formula, it would look something like this. So remember the formula, the weight 1 and the input 1, all those are added inside the activation function. So it will look something like this. So the activation function, and inside these parentheses, you just add your weights, the inputs, plus the bias. And plus the bias. So now this formula is then fed into the activation function, which can give you an output. Without the activation function, you can't have a output. So now let's get into like a recap sort of thing. So yeah. this is like another diagram that I wanted to show you guys. Basically, this is like the output neuron. As you guys can see, there is the weighted sum. Weighted sum is basically like the input times the total thing. Basically, this formula right here. See this one, guys? That's like the weighted sum. So let me go back. So, yeah, so here is like the diagram. So here it's basically there's the output layer, then the weighted sum is then given to the activation function. Yeah, and the activation function prepares an output, and then the output layer just uses that output to actually give an output. This is like an again that I want diagram that I want to show you guys, just to show you how the activation function works. So as you guys can see, the lines, they give the input, the weighted sum, and then the neurons get these weighted sum, and they just put the weighted sum inside the activation function, which prepares an output basically. So yeah, yeah, that was like the diagram that I wanted to show you guys. So yeah, let's get into the recap. So let's have like a quick recap. So like I said earlier, so what are the weights? So the weights are like initialized. So every neural network are initialized with a set of weights. These weights are then optimized when training. And we all need these weights. Every neural network has it. And they're like in those lines, or what I call it, synapse. So now let's look at what biases are. So a bias basically helps reduce the variance and provides more flexibility for the neural network. What I mean by this is that the bias, like I told you guys earlier, helps reduce the variance of the data set or something like that. And it also provides more flexibility for the neural network if it has lots of kind of complicated data, and yeah. So now finally, the activation function. The activation function prepares an output with the weighted sum. What I mean by that is that the activation function so it prepares an output, the weighted, like in the parentheses, and inside the parentheses there's like the weighted sum. The weighted sum is basically this one right here. See this, guys? You see this one? This is the weighted sum. So let me go back. So this is the weighted. So yeah, see you guys later, and share in the project. Make sure to subscribe and like this video. See you guys later.